And so we then move into the 2010s up until around about now, where digital smile design hit the mainstream, where we moved from that analog digital hybrid to pure digital workflow. I'm sure there are some people out there who look fondly at these shapes and rulers, this database of elements that DSD came out with in the early days. And the late nights agonizing over cases on your Keynote. Side note, I don't understand the love of Keynote within the dental industry, but I think if you had been there for this era of dentistry, you would appreciate just how revolutionary this was in your workflow. We had the emergence of DSD Connect, digital labs, where you could be based in Sydney and you could be sending case files to Madrid on the other side of the world. We had digitization of orthodontics, being able to segment out individualized teeth and move them around and show a simulation of where you wanted it to end up. We had CBCTs, DICOMs, actually being able to export out of their softwares and turn those slices into an STL that then could be overlaid with an STL of the actual model. So then you had an even further understanding of the relationships between bone, tooth, and gingiva, and the gingival complex. The ability orthognatically to be able to see in context where in the face things were seated. Guided surgery was a big change, being able to have that 3D imaging and that CAD CAM workflow designing and using natural files that we could preserve the fidelity of through fine and detailed milling with monolithic restorations. We had 3D printing, which was a huge game changer, and the changing of that to become something that was more and more affordable to the average dentist. And lab. More and more data being added, developed, revolutionized, where all of these things converged to be able to have this digital workflow where we changed 2D or 3D into 2D, back to 3D, and do it in a way that's reproducible and predictable. And the best part about it was that you could show the patient from the start, physically inside their mouth, where they would end up when they finished. And from a medico-legal perspective, that was incredibly useful as well. And it meant that everybody in the team was all on the same page. And that brings us to now and the next steps. I always say to patients, we're living in the future, but the future is now. And because we are such a driven profession that we want to push these boundaries and develop and change technologies, the future is always now. We now have the ability to have these complex stacked data builds that show us the convergence of tooth, bone, gum, facial tissues, nerves, all of the aspects that we can gather together. We have new and improved ways of collecting data that has always been a challenge to be able to effectively and accurately bring into your design softwares. But with all this additional data, it then becomes the question of things are overwhelmed. There are so many data points that I question whether we're actually effectively using this data to its full capacity. This is where SmileCloud shines. It's introduced a collaborative cloud-based digital workflow with an AI-assisted library matching system that enhances precision and communication between clinicians, specialists, and technicians. And you ask me, what makes SmileCloud so unique? Well, let me paint you a picture first. This is me. And I have a patient who's come in, who's very excited to get started on their treatment plan. And so we start off by gathering their diagnostics. We gather DICOMs, STLs, photographs, videos, facial scans, all of the things we need. And then we upload them to Dropbox. And then I upload them into a planning portal. And before I upload that into the planning portal, I realized that someone in the team hasn't uploaded some of the records for the Dropbox. So then I have to chase up where the diagnostics are. I then upload into the planning portal, and within the planning portal, I put my instructions of what I would like. I then message a WhatsApp chat, letting them know that I've uploaded into the portal and that I've put instructions in there so that they know to go look at it. They then respond and send back a design or whatever I've requested with feedback notes, and then they message me in WhatsApp saying, hey, feedback's in there. And I then task myself with a HubSpot notification to make sure that it all gets done by specific dates and key timelines. And ultimately, it ends up being this head spin because there's so many steps, so many nuances where things will go wrong. There's too many links in the chain, too many different locations, and things get dropped. Not to mention, with something like data collection and data management, it's a team effort. You need the whole team on board to know how to upload things in certain areas. And when you're dealing with several different digital planning portals, it's very confusing and very difficult to onboard a new staff member with all of these nuances. And you end up in this situation where, like me, this is literally my computer. I have 6 different Google windows open with enough tabs to give anybody a small mental breakdown. And I'm not going to start a competition here, but we all have multiple missed messages on WhatsApp that are yet to be replied to, text messages galore, and missed phone calls. And you have family and friends wondering why they never hear from us. Because it's exhausting. You burn out. You get sick of all of these things popping up. And most of the messages, a lot of the time, are not even necessarily contextual to you as the clinician. It's more staff designing and proceeding cases in the background. This is where SmileCloud comes into the fold with a solution. It's your one-stop shop as a jump-off point. And there are 6 key things about it that I think makes it very unique and powerful. Number 1 is the AI-driven biometric smile design. SmileCloud uses artificial intelligence to search through a vast library of natural tooth shapes and generate photorealistic smile mock-ups tailored to the face and the dental anatomy. Each generated design uses a unique blend of natural shapes, ensuring both realism and personalization. So rather than relying on preset templates, its function is like a search engine for anatomy, offering authentic and harmonious results with minimal input. It's very good at analyzing facial features, facial data points. I've used a lot of softwares in my time, and I have found it's very rare that I need to adjust things in the SmileCloud facial analysis. It's pretty bang on. And you then have the ability to have the manipulation and adjustment of so many little fine details, embrasures, percentages, and I like the fact that it has real-time numbers, so you can have not only visual but quantitative data to be able to compare and analyze what's going on in regards to what treatment needs to be planned. It has real-time feedback, and as you're adjusting things within the 2D, the formula is thinking about it in context with the 3D smile design, because every adjustment you make is going to impact how that translates into your 3D mock-up and 3D diagnostics, treatment planning. And the photorealism is able to be manipulated and adjusted in many different ways to make it look believable. In terms of number 2, I love its effortless workflow and speed. I know that their little quote I always see pop up is that a design can produce the first smile mock-up in as few as 4 clicks, with plans to reduce that even further in the future. This streamlined process avoids repetitive preliminaries and tripping over my words, and prioritizes refinement only when needed. So what that means is that you're not having to go over stuff all the time and make all of these different iterations. It's something that organically happens. I'm going to paint you another picture. This is again me. And I had a day where, on one of my rare occasions, I had a day off. When I say a day off, we all know a day off is just a chance to catch up on paperwork, clinical work, maybe a little bit of housework. And I had a little sleep in, and I woke up and I checked my WhatsApp messages. And what do I see? A message from Fadi. Yes, stress, who is a colleague of mine. And he says, "Oh, just wondering where that mock-up is. Have the team printed it?" It was 10 o'clock when I was reading this message. "The patient's coming in at 11. And I thought, shit. That had completely gone through to past the keeper into the goals. I had not heard about it. I didn't realize. And I thought, oh my God, what am I going to do? Traditionally, if this had happened and I was trying to design on other softwares like ExoCAD, I would have been screwed, because ultimately it would have taken me at least probably half an hour to get all of the data together, get all the records, upload them all, get them all in the right position, and then start working through the flow. It would take me at least sort of an hour to really get a design done. And also in that process, if I'm not bang on with my way that I set up the 2D photos for the smile design in relation to the 3D objects, whatever I give on the other end is not going to look good. It's going to be wrong. And that can be very, very out. SmileCloud is different because I have a lot of confidence in what I'm putting on that model is going to be consistently reproducible when you print it in the mouth. So this is the case in question. I printed everything after I madly did this design, and it only really took me probably 20 minutes, which was awesome. And that's the initial, immediately afterwards, that it looked like. And yeah, there were a few things we needed to tweak. And I know they say that you can design a incredible smile design in less than 4 clicks. But for my colleague who is overseas, you can do it in literally 2 words. This was a case where it was orthodontic space closure. However, we were also planning on doing some bonding afterwards. Her being younger, we'll do some resin bonding, and I took some review records. I sent it through to SmileCloud, and what I found after doing a wax up that really probably took me 5 to 10 minutes, I decided that I think she needs more refinement because the canines need rotating, and we just need to close the spaces a bit more because the height to width ratio is going to be wrong. It's not going to look good. And if we're going to do it once, do it right. And so in 2 words, he said, okay, and yex. I am not entirely sure what yex means, but I kind of got the general gist, and so we sent off for refinement. The thing with this effortless workflow is that it's very easy to learn. It's really a gateway for people who want to understand design. And yes, you're probably not going to be buying ExoCAD as a general dentist and designing up all your stuff because you don't have the time. And it's complicated. There's a lot of different features when it comes to these professional CAD softwares. CAD? CAM softwares. CAD CAM, you know. And so for that reason, it's a really great avenue for you to be able to get the groundwork down so the lab can then iterate and build upon. And the benefit is the orientations of the tooth files that you're placing in SmileCloud translate directly across to something like ExoCAD. I keep using ExoCAD as the example because that's my main one that I'll jump out into. And so 90% of the design is done. It's just finessing what you need to do with some of the smaller details in ExoCAD. And because of its simplicity, it means that everyone from a new grad who wants to do some alignment and a little bit of bonding can reasonably inexpensively design that for themselves, because lab designs, they can get expensive, and when you're a new grad, you don't always have the accessibility to those sorts of services. And it works all the way through to the other end of the spectrum, where you have somebody who's an expert, who's been practicing for 30 years doing complex multidisciplinary dentistry. But it's a simple and elegant system that is very malleable depending on what your needs are. The third reason is the 3D review and collaboration tools. It lets clinicians overlay 3D data like CBCTs, intraoral scans, and restorations in the browser. You can annotate directly on the 3D, measure critical distances, and use heat maps to assess static occlusion or prep clearance or collisions, all chairside. The cross-sectional views also allow you and helps you to evaluate biological structures like bone levels or restoration margins in positions, particularly when you're looking at surgical implant planning contexts. This, yes, is something that you could do on other softwares, but it's simple, it's easy, everything's already all loaded. You just have to select what you want to build into the stack. This is a primary example of something that you can quickly use to be able to enhance your communication. This is a patient, and I'm sure it's a classic case for a lot of people who'd had clear aligner treatment, and she was adamant that the wire wasn't working, it was flexing, that her front teeth were moving. I could tell down to the micron level that no, it was the same. It was fine. And in fact, if anything, she had been not wearing her aligner retainer of an evening, because I could see that quadrant 1 had shifted and had lost a bit of the expansion we'd built over time. And so my hygienist came back because the patient was inquiring how much had it moved, and I could assess and find that it had moved somewhere between 0.1 and 0.2 millimeters, 100 to 200 microns. Is that clinically significant? Depends on the patient. But having that level of detail is very, very valuable from a communication perspective, but then also from a medico-legal perspective. If they turn around and are adamant that the treatment plan hasn't worked and that things aren't moving, nothing's changed, I can show, well, actually, no, look at this data. Like, it's there. You can't argue with data. It allows for you to integrate 3D planning in situations like FP1s, which have always traditionally been a very challenging case. You have the ability then and there to be able to see prosthetically how does that relate to your implant placements. A combination between surgical planning and aesthetic planning. Because for a long time, people have placed implants and sort of found the best bone, and then we figure out afterwards how are we going to get something on there on the top. This allows us to see that end point before we even place anything. And having that prosthetic implant interface also means that we can really think about how to approach extracting the teeth, cultivating the sockets and preserving them, creating those forms. Being able to segment out the individual roots allows us to be able to then look at what's going to be the best custom healing abutment, pre-making them so that as soon as you're taking that tooth out, you're putting something that is biologically identical in terms of that profile and cross-section. Number 4 is the centralized case management in the cloud. Cases are stored as a visual storyline that's accessible from any device. There's no fragmented file sharing. There's everything there. Everything lives securely in the cloud with real-time tracking and smart notifications. Key clinical findings like photos, scans, videos, STLs, and DICOM files, they can all be uploaded and viewed seamlessly in this browser without external tools. This is what your browser looks like, and this is a real-time recording of processing and looking around. But you can see there that everybody is all lined up. You've got the ability to change the cover photos, see what you want to see. You can change patient names, add new cases. You can see different categories on the left. If you want to add categories, that's doable. It's all very simple and organized. And then when you enter into the patient, you have the storyline. You have it organized by dates. So you've got your initial documentation, you've got your mock-up files, CBCTs. You can categorize this and break it all down into individuals, or you can have a look at it in all the documents section. You also have the ability to star key and relevant documents and files, depending on what you want to be easily and quickly accessible. You even have the option to incorporate articles. So I'm sure everybody's had those patients who want data on why you're using a particular bone graft over another one, what material safety sheets, anything they need and desire, we can have stored here in one location so you know what they've had access to and you know what the team has provided for them to read in regards to their case. And on the left here is their answer for WhatsApp. So you have your virtual treatment room where you can invite exactly whoever it is that needs to be in the room. No more random messages about other cases. Because if you have a practice where you have a few people working within it as clinicians, but you're working with one particular lab, you might have somebody else's cases popping up. You can actively invite people, email them, get them to come in, or you can use the drop down menu for adding people to be able to find what you need. And anything that's relevant to you pops up in your notifications. You have access through this via your phone as well. So when you're out and about, you can check things to keep the ball rolling. You have chat messages with unread notifications if anyone's mentioned you in any particular spots to really draw your attention on something that's urgent. You have requests, you have activity, so you know what people are doing in the background. Because it's hard when you have an external portal. You don't know whether A, has the lab seen it, because all you can see is that you've uploaded that. And B, you don't know what's happening. Is it pending? Is it processing? What's going on? You have the data to be able to track that. Number 5 is the patient-facing Passport app. SmileCloud has a passport that enables you to securely share treatment plans, smile simulations, scans, 3D design previews, videos, and documents directly with the patient, and it supports encrypted communication, which fosters informed decision-making and trust. It's all documented there. It makes the patient feel like they're part of the team as well, because ultimately it's their teeth that you're working on. It's their body, and they deserve to be empowered with knowledge and information rather than just saying, all right, leave it with me, I'll sort it out. They want to know what's going on. And it's really sleek, it's simple, it has all the things you need, and it presents it in a really nice and effective way. And it's Apple and Android friendly. So I've always struggled with some softwares only liking Windows, some softwares only liking Apple. It's really nice having something that's agnostic. It will work across whatever you have in your heart's desire. And that brings me to number 6. I love this system because it's open platform. It is cross-platform interoperational, and it is designed to accept all of the standard files, STLs, OBJ, PLY facial scans, DICOM CBCTs and DCMs, JPEGs, PNGs, PDFs, MP4, all of them. The openness allows you to be able to integrate with various scanners and software programs and platforms without being locked into this proprietary hardware ecosystem. Because it pisses me off when you have certain products or services, and I'm not looking at anyone in particular, but you have these situations where you have to have this specific scanner if you want to use this specific center, and relationships change, contracts change. You might go and buy a $30,000 scanner, and then 6 months later, the companies have a falling out, and now it's not helpful. Openness keeps the market competitive, but also it allows people to work together. It allows companies to work together and makes things accessible so you can try out new products without having to lock yourself in these roads. And particularly, like, I've been out now for 8 years, but in my early years as an associate, I don't really have the buying power to be able to make decisions and calls on big practice softwares and systems and digital products. I have to just use what I get given. And so this allows you to be able to be flexible with that. And you have the accessibility from any device. The platform runs entirely on a cloud-based system, and it's a browser-based system, so there is no software to install. And in Australia, which is famous for having some of the world's shittest internet, it actually works very efficiently, which is honestly amazing because it's ridiculous how terrible our internet is, considering how expensive it is. This open access model allows clinicians and labs to log in from anywhere, including Mac, PC, tablet, mobile phone, a potato. Like, at this rate, it's amazing where you can get access. It opens communication. SmileCloud supports that real-time collaboration, version tracking, and messaging, which promotes that openness between users rather than this static single author authority workflow. And it plays nicely with other systems. It encourages interdisciplinary input. It breaks down silos between different dental softwares and hardwares. And that, to me, is one of the biggest things I love about SmileCloud, because they have such a strong belief that they will always be open. They will, despite the fact that they're owned by Straumann, they are trying to bring people out of silos, whether you're using an assortment of different products that aren't Straumann necessarily. They want it to be a smoother process, because I have some cases historically where I've ended up using at least 4 different softwares, maybe even 5, jumping in and out on different sections because one software might do something else slightly better, or there's always just fiddly things across different areas. And I get so frustrated not having the ability for them it all to talk together. Like, I get that different businesses have different requirements, but it just ends up making things a really clunky user experience for the user. And when something like SmileCloud comes along that is so streamlined, it's the simple progression to say, well, stuff all these other annoying softwares. I'm going to SmileCloud. It fosters that transparency in the treatment planning process from clinician to patient. And also, again, I know I keep harping on about it, but from a medico-legal standpoint, that is very, very valuable.